Welcome to Sikbaggers YouTube channel. I'm Steve. It's Saturday morning and this trike has to go out today, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to show you this. Today we're going to be installing front and rear brakes on a 14 to 18 tri-glide or trike from Harley Davidson. This freewheeler has been in our videos in the past. Like I said, we did the vector fairing on it, audio upgrade, we did an amp, we did color match lower fairings from Mad Van Black with more 6.5 inch speakers down here. So those modifications have taken this freewheeler a step closer to being an actual like tri-glide. Now in the last couple of days we've had this freewheeler in here. We've been doing quite a bit of work to it. We did the lower fork legs, we got a new wheel and tire put on the front, we got fork cans, axle nut covers, and we got rear wheels to put on the back, which I will change out while I'm doing the brakes because I knew this needed a brake job on it, so we saved that for last. So when we put this back together, we'll take the OEM wheels off, put the new ones on. All this stuff came from a website called angelscleanup.com. Now Angels Cleanup does an exchange program, so you will take all of your stuff that you're taking off and ship it back to them. So my buddy put an order in. He got the wheels, the lower fork legs, the cans, the axle nut covers, everything from there, and then you will take that stuff and ship it back to an exchange program. So if you want to check that out, it's angelscleanup.com. I'll put a link down in the description down below if you want to look at that. Now this is definitely something that you can do at home. No need to take it to Harley Davidson or an indie shop or anything like that to do it. A few simple wrenches and we can get this job done. So let's get the camera over here and let's get to work. On the front brakes, you're going to need a few simple sockets. We got a 12-point socket 9/16 and we got a 12-point socket 10 millimeter. 10 millimeter here, 9/16 down here. When I say 12-point, this is what I'm talking about. If you look inside there, you can see that's not a standard socket. So you will need 12-point sockets for this job. Most decent socket sets come with a set of 12-point sockets. If not, there's not too many other bolts on Harley Davidsons that use the 12-point socket, so you may just want to pick these up individually. This pad pin bolt down here, we're going to go ahead and bust that loose first because that is easier to do while it's on the bike before you pull it off and try to hold it and break that thing loose. So we're going to get this thing loose. We're going to switch it out to our 10 millimeter. We're going to grab our bottom bolt, short one at the bottom, top bolt. We're going to make sure that we got a hold of the caliper. Longer bolt at the top. We're going to slide this backwards. Make sure to not hit your wheel when you pull this off. Now I've just got a piece of wire tied up here to the steering stabilizer. I'm going to go ahead and pull some weight off of this and let this hang for a second, just like that. That just pulls the weight off of that line. Over here on top on your brake side, you got your master cylinder cover up here. We're going to take a Phillips head screwdriver and we're going to take this out. Now before you pull this cover off, make sure you've got a towel or rag, something like that. Brake fluid gets on paint, that's bad. A lot of times this rubber gasket in here has been on there for a long time and it gets stuck to the master cylinder. So when you pull the cover off, just be careful. If you see any drips, you're going to want to cover it. Like I got lower fairings down here, they're painted, so I'm going to take this rag, I'm going to cover that up. So if I get any drips out of this, it's going to go on those towels. I'm going to put one down here on the floorboard and the brake pedal as well because we don't want any kind of fluids getting on our foot controls. So we get this cover off. If this gasket is stuck, it's going to pull out on the edges. Just make sure you take your time and you push that gasket back in. You're going to take a towel, wipe off, make sure there's no dirt or anything like that, so when we get ready to seat that back on there, it's nice and clean. Brake fluid gets on this black powder coating that's on these perches. If you leave it set on there, it will eventually start eating through that black. So make sure to get it cleaned up. Now when we're done, I'm just wiping it up with a towel right now, but when we're done, I'll take an actual degreaser and I'll clean it again, and then I actually take it a step further and get some like 70 or 90% rubbing alcohol and I clean it again just to make sure it's off of everything. Now over here on the calipers, it's very important that when you have the calipers off the rotors or the master cylinder open or both, that you don't hit the brakes, because if you do, you can push these pistons too far out. There is a point on the calipers where they can be pushed too far that you can't get them to go back in. So if you do that, that's a really bad day. Before you take the old brake pads out, get yourself a big flathead screwdriver like this so we can push those pistons back in. This type of caliper is not open on either side, so we can't get like a C-clamp in there to push the pistons in. Up there on the master cylinder, you may want to take a towel and put tape around it, because on this style bike, when you push these, it kind of squirts up like a small geyser. And if you're down here working with this caliper, and you're not watching that master cylinder up there, it could be shooting out on you. So be careful when you push these in, do it very slowly. But you're gonna get the screwdriver in here, you're gonna twist it, you've got the 3 pistons. Make sure all 3 pistons are seated all the way in. Now once you do that, you're gonna go back to your 9/16, and we're gonna go ahead and finish removing that pad bolt. Now I got kind of fat fingers, so I'll just take my screwdriver. I'm gonna push that to the middle. We're gonna get that old pad out. Same thing on this side. To the middle. Get the old pad out. Now from here, we're gonna take some brake fluid cleaner. We're gonna get in here. Inside here, there is a pad spring. It's chrome. You can see it. It's probably gonna be black just from brake dust and stuff like that. Get you some brake fluid cleaner, clean that up. So I'm gonna cut the camera here. We're gonna get this all sprayed up, cleaned up, and then I'll show you how to put the pads back in. Super important to make sure your brake pads are, of course, facing the inside where it's going to hit the rotor. Right down here in the bottom, you got that hole for that pin. So we're just gonna slide this in. We're gonna set it in the middle. That spring pad is gonna keep it pushed up. So what I do is I take my finger, make sure to hold the bottom in place, and then we're gonna push down and over, pop that into place. Same thing on this side. We're gonna put this in, keeping our thumb on the bottom so it's pushed all the way over. We're gonna go in a little bit of an angle. We're gonna push in and over. So it's gonna look just like that. When you're cleaning all this stuff up, make sure to spray this down and clean this up as well. We take that little brush and just kind of go over it and get any kind of brake dust and gunk off of it. When I'm putting it in, I keep my thumb in the middle to keep the pads separated. It's gonna help you guide that bolt back in. I'm gonna go ahead and run it in. We'll torque it down after it's put back on the bike. Take our wire off. We're gonna put this back around the rotor. We're gonna slide it up into place. We're gonna grab our long bolt for the top, get it started. Short bolt at the bottom, get it started. These 2 bolts get torqued 28 to 38 foot-pounds. These 2 bolts right here get torqued 28 to 38 foot-pounds. The caliper pin bolt, 23 to 27 foot-pounds. So from there, we're gonna repeat the process on the other side. So I'm gonna cut the camera, get that side done, and then we'll finish up the front. Now at this point, you wanna check your reservoir, because if you're pushing those pistons in, you actually lost some fluid, you wanna make sure that you top that off with some brake fluid. We're gonna put our cover back on. Make sure it's seated correctly. Get our 2 screws back in. Once we get both of them in, we'll go back and forth until we get it tightened down. Now, because our pistons are pushed all the way out, we want to make sure that we squeeze the handle on this several times until we feel the brakes get tight. Now we're good and tight. Took about 7 or 8 pumps on that, so it may take quite a bit. Once you feel that brake lever get tight, you're now done with the front. Now let's get the camera over here and let's get these rears changed. Before we get this jacked up, we're going to take the center cap off. Got to find the slot right here on the side. Flathead screwdriver. Give it a little twist. We want to make sure that the emergency brake is set and then it is in gear. We're going to take a 3/4 and a breaker bar. And we're going to try to break these loose. At this point, we can go ahead and jack the tire up. We got it up off the lift. We're going to remove these. We're going to pull this wheel and tire off. So the first thing we have to do is release our emergency brake, right? I've got the emergency brake pushed down right now so you can see it. So when we slide this boot back here on the adjuster, you'll see this long nut right here. It's really long, goes back to right in there. You got your jam nut right here. The 1/2 inch is gonna go on here, and then on this jam nut, it's about a 14 millimeter. So we're gonna hold this one, and we're gonna release this one. Okay, we get that jam nut spun all the way up, and then we can turn this one. We're gonna loosen all of that pressure on that emergency brake. Now you can't see it right now, but I will show you when I get this off. You got the same 10 millimeter 12-point sockets up here. On the back side, on the other side of this bolt, you've got a kind of like a squared off nut. And I'll show you that here in just a second, but you're gonna take your 1/2 inch wrench and you're gonna slide that over that like that. Then you can take your 10 millimeter up here and go ahead and break this loose. Get this front one busted loose. We're going to do the same thing at the bottom. We're going to find that square. We're going to break this one loose. Now we can pull these bolts out. At this point, we can pull the caliper off. We'll let that come down. And we can see our brake pads back here set in these grooves. There's a groove on the bottom, groove on the top, goes around. All you have to do is just simply pull this out. On the back side, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to pull it out. And then there's a little metal spring clip up in the top, just like that. There's not one on the bottom. Now we're going to be replacing these with Harley Davidson part number 413-00033, brake pad kit RR. Inside that kit, you're going to have 2 new clips, 2 packages of piston lube, of course, for the right and left side, and 2 sets of brake pads. Before we do all of that, we're going to take the rear master cylinder cover off and make sure to get this piston pushed all the way in, just like we did on the front. And then we're going to take some brake clean and get all of this stuff cleaned up. It's very important that these bushings right here slide freely. This one here is very stiff. So we're going to pull those out, clean that area, re-lube those. Got one on the bottom and one on the top. So I'm going to cut the camera, get all this stuff cleaned up. Now before you squeeze these in, take the rear master cylinder cover off. It's right in front of your tank on the right hand side, right on the side of the neck. We're going to do this very slowly so we don't blow fluid everywhere on the other side. We're just going to slowly press this in with a C-clamp till we get that piston all the way in. Your metal plate goes in like this with the little tab facing forward. We're going to press it back up into place. We're going to take our brake shoe on the back side, make sure it's setting in the bottom, set it into the top. We're going to set it in the top, push up on it, and set that into place. Make sure that those are pressed in good. So we got one of the bushing pins out. We're going to get this thing cleaned up and then we're going to re-lube it. One thing I want to show you inside of here, there's a rubber O-ring at the top and at the bottom. So once we get this cleaned up, we run a rag through here with some brake fluid cleaner on it, get that cleaned out. Then we take that piston lube that came in there and we're going to lightly coat this. So we got this cleaned up, dried off. Going to get our piston lube out. Very light coat. I'm going to slide this back through. Now, you can see how much easier this moves inside there. Same thing on this one. We get this cleaned up. Get our little bit of lube on there. Push it through the back. Now, you can see how much smoother both of those move. Now, we can bring our caliper back up into place. Make sure our pins are pushed all the way back. Get this up into place. Service manual calls for a couple of drops of Loctite 243 on each bolt. So we're going to put that on. You want to make sure that your bushing back here is vertical so you can get a wrench on it. So we're going to do that. We're going to stand that straight up and down. Same thing with the bottom so you can get a wrench on it the next time. Make sure you hold the back 41 to 45 foot-pounds on these. So we got our new wheel. Get it mounted up. So we'll finish torquing these down after everything is done. At this point, we're gonna go ahead and cut the camera, do the other side because it's the exact same thing on this side. Now that we got both sides done, the last thing you wanna do is put your master cylinder cover back on. This is your rear brake master cylinder up here that we talked about earlier. Put that back on, make sure that's sealed. We come down here, we're gonna pump the rear brakes just like we did the front until we feel pressure back on the pads. Now we got good pressure on that. Now we're going to roll it off the lift and set the emergency brake. Now there's two different ways you can set your emergency brake. Wheels on the ground and wheels off the ground. Of course, we have the wheels on the ground now, so that's what we're going to do. We already loosened this before we did the brake pads, so now we have to readjust it. With the wheels on the ground, we're going to set this to the first click on the emergency brake. We're going to push, see if we feel any resistance. We don't feel any resistance yet, so we're going to release the brake and we're going to tighten this. We're going to go down one click. We're going to push the bike. We do have a little bit of resistance. We'll give it just a little more. And with the e-brake off, we want to make sure that the bike rolls freely. And then we want to put it one click. We want to see if we have some resistance. We're just going to keep doing this until we feel resistance on that first click. And give it just a little more. Go to the first click. See if we feel resistance. Now we got some resistance. Now from here we can go to the third click and see if the bike rolls. It does not. With the e-brake fully on the third click on this gear, we cannot get the bike to roll. So we're going to release it, make sure it's not too tight. We want to make sure with it released we got free mobility of the brake system. One click, resistance, three clicks, full resistance, all the way off, we're good to go. At this point you're going to tighten up your jam nut. You're going to take ½ inch, put it back on your adjuster. 14, back on the jam nut. Now we're going to tighten that jam nut down. Just like that. Now before I slide the boot back on, I'll take the little finger. I use Lucas Red and Tacky. And I will put some on this. So later, because this is the bottom of the bike, so it sees a lot of dirt, grime, dust. That boot does pretty good. But we're going to put this on here for future adjustments to help that out. Also, on the back side of this gear right here, I will lube this up too. So that goes a little smoother on and off. Once we got everything lubed up, we're going to take our boot. We're going to slide it back forward and make sure we cover the whole assembly. So that's it. Like I said, really simple thing to do. Get your hands dirty a little bit, but think about all that money you just saved doing this yourself at home. So now that I've showed you how to do it, when it comes up for your next brake change, you're going to be super confident in the garage. You can follow along in this video. Like I said, this is 2014 to 18. The other models, the brake calipers are a little different, and the emergency brake is a little bit different too. Just make sure that you do both sides of the trike before you set the emergency brake. It is linked in the rear. Just because the pedal's on the left side, it actually grabs both discs. So make sure you do both sides of the bike, then set your emergency brake. It's super important to do the emergency brake. The emergency brake is just a cable that goes back to your calipers, and like I said, it's linked together and it actually grabs your disc. That's your brake. It's not a transmission lock or anything like that. So when you actually change the brake pads, you need to readjust your emergency brake, and that goes on all of the models. So now that we got it all done, I'm gonna go in the house, get myself cleaned up. I've got an 8-pound brisket to smoke today, and I don't think my wife's gonna appreciate it if I'm out there rubbing stuff all over that thing with hands looking like this. So if you have any questions on this, you know the deal. Comment section down below. I'll try to help you the best that I can. Make sure to check out the rest of our channel. We do have some trike and tri-glide stuff on there. Not as much as I would like, but we're working on it. So anyway, I hope to see you in the next video. But until then, as always, be safe. Keep your knees in the breeze. Hey, thanks for stopping by and checking out our videos today. If you like what you see, make sure you hit that like button, hit the little subscribe button popping up over here. If you want to check out more of our content, I've got 2 videos right here that'll get you started. Not really going to say anything else, just click one of those videos and take you to another video.